As a matter of fact, people will say to us sometimes, well, why are you on TikTok? It's so evil. And we're like, no, you were supposed to take the gospel and go everywhere with it. Just go out into the world with it.
The number one way people develop their values is through story. So we have the most powerful infrastructure for storytelling and value development that has ever existed, and it is owned completely by people who hate us and hate our values and hate our way of life and have been chipping away at our culture for decades. We cannot afford to not be making good media. You can be a part of this.
Seamus Coughlin, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's nice of you to come and visit us here at Catholic Answers because you're a big internet sensation.
Oh, that's kind of you.
We don't get big internet sensations every day visiting us.
That's very kind of you to say. I was in the area for some speaking engagements and some podcasts I wanted to do, and I love what Catholic Answers does. Trent Horn's a friend, so I just sent him a message and I said, hey, I'm going to be out there. I'm going to be in the area. If there's any way I can collaborate or if there's any way I can do one of the shows, I'd love to. And so he set this all up, and I'm very happy to be here talking to you right now.
Oh, very nice. So for those who don't know what you do, you make uproariously funny cartoons.
You're very kind. You're very kind.
But that is what you do, right?
Well, I do make cartoons. Whether they're uproariously funny, I suppose, is a subjective matter, but they are.
How do you get
they're
in the uproariously funny?
And you'll all love them if you go watch FreedomToons.
Yeah.
So,
I'm sorry, I interrupted your pitch. I apologize. Don't ever interrupt a man's pitch for his hilarious cartoons.
Yeah.
How do you get in the hilarious cartoon business? Like, I wouldn't even know where to start how to get in the hilarious cartoon business.
And that's the reality. Is like you just have to start. It was 11 years ago when I started FreedomToons. I was 19 years old, and I knew I wanted to work in animation. I'd been teaching myself to animate since I was about 12 years old, and when I was 18, I knew at graduation I was gonna try to animate full-time, start a small business, and so I did. And I was working freelance gigs and going more or less the typical route, attending community college while living with my parents. And then I started posting these short animated cartoons about my political views to YouTube, and they ended up picking up traction. And so I ended up doing that really, really consistently. And the short of it is, by the time I graduated college, I was able to make a living doing it. But
congratulations.
Thank you.
That's wonderful.
And now we've got a small team of people who are working to churn these cartoons out, because what a lot of people don't realize is animation is extremely expensive and time consuming. Yeah. So for like an episode of The Simpsons, it costs several $1 million to create. Even an episode of South Park, which is some of the simplest looking animation there is, it costs around $1 million. And in season 1, right, of South Park, very wonky, very low budget, intentionally crude animation. That was in 1997, and it cost about $250,000 per episode. So adjusted for inflation, that's like $500,000. It's $500,000. So the reason it's so expensive is because you need a lot of people working around the clock in order to churn that kind of content out. And so we are one of the only YouTube channels that does animation on a weekly basis. Like, not just one of the only political channels or one of the only channels run by a Catholic. We are one of the only channels doing animation on a weekly, sometimes twice weekly basis. It's very hard to navigate that and leverage it, but with a really dedicated team and clever budgeting and pipelining, we've been able to get it to the point where we can keep churning these videos out, which is important because you can't win the culture war without making culture.
That's okay. This is why I'm so delighted to have you on and talk about that, because like, it's endless. If you just say you had HBO and Netflix and Prime and all the major things, and you throw in the TV networks and what you get on cable and all that, endless stuff that is appealing to people's lowest and basest desires,
yes,
or just intentionally ideological, and often ideological in a stupid way, promoting things that are not good for people, that are just
anti-human, anti-God.
So, I look at that and I go, like, what are we gonna do about it? Like this, it's endless. So here comes you, and you're doing a cartoon a week, and you can pull off a cartoon a week. So tell me how you feel like that fits into the broader culture of what's being produced.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So this is actually a big part of what the next step is for us and what I came here to promote. As you mentioned, right now in 2025, we have the most robust infrastructure that has ever existed for storytelling, with television, with internet, with streaming, with film. We are able to create these visceral, emotional experiences for people on screen. And the number one way people develop their values is through story. So we have the most powerful infrastructure for storytelling and value development that has ever existed, and it is owned completely by people who hate us and hate our values and hate our way of life and have been chipping away at our culture for decades. Now, I've been making these cartoons for 11 years. We have over 700 animated videos, and on our channel, we've got over 1 million subscribers, over 290 million views with $0 spent on marketing because people are hungry for content that isn't created by people who have contempt for them. And right now what we're doing is we're branching out into creating a full television-length animated show. It's called Twisted Plots, and it's an animated anthology series. We've already created the pilot episode.
Wow.
And if people want to see that, they can go to twistedplots.com, and they can support the show. I've got the team, I've got the track record, I've got the experience. If I have your support, if you go to twistedplots.com and you get us closer to our goal, I will be unstoppable. We will be able to create an amazing show that will spread positive values, not through these ham-fisted monologues or very cheesy, forced morality tale-telling that unfortunately many Christians have attempted in the past, but just through good, funny stories that promote a good message through the story and not by being ham-fisted.
Yeah, you remind. I always paraphrase it because I know I get the quote wrong, but Flannery O'Connor talking about.
Oh, she's the best.
She's talking about a good Catholic novel, and she said, "Well, first it has to be a good novel," and
That's right.
That I think is something we a lot of really good-hearted media has been produced, like people with the right motivation, but not with that skill of storytelling that you're talking about. And if you want, Hollywood may, in many cases, produce really low, even propagandistic content, for all kinds of things that are morally damaging to people. But they can tell a story.
That's exactly right.
They've got the skill. They can tell a story.
That's exactly right. And so this is something I like to bring up. I've been talking a little bit about Titanic with people when I go pitch this when I talk about media, because of course Titanic's just my favorite movie. And
Don't
it's so
tell
good.
me the end. I've never gotten to the end. So I just don't want to know how it ends.
But in all seriousness, one of the reasons I bring up Titanic is because this is the highest grossing romance film of all time, and romance just speaks to us on a very deep, visceral level. Well, you watch this film, and because James Cameron's a true master of his craft, you root for the main characters who are in love with each other. But if you write that film down on paper, it's an evil, horrible story. It's this very selfish woman who goes from one kind of selfish person to another kind of selfish person, and that's her whole character arc, and we're supposed to feel like she's grown. And she's fornicating and cheating on her fiance, and allowing this man who she doesn't really know to see her nude and draw her nude, and then she puts the drawing of herself in her fiance's safe just to hurt him. It's a really twisted story, actually.
Dang.
It's evil. It's very evil. But the reason I mention this is because people watch that film, and it's such a successful film because it's a story that's told effectively, and people want effective stories. We can either have effective stories that promote positive morality, or we can have effective stories that promote adultery, that promote fornication. And you see this all the time, actually, in women's media and in romance. Adultery and fornication being justified. This happens in almost every love film, which is a diabolical inversion because those things are not loving. This is also something that happens in films that are directed more towards men. You look in the past, you had films where the protagonist was a family man, where he cared about his wife and children. You look at, modern action heroes like James Bond, he's sleeping with a different woman in every film. So we'll tell these effective stories
every scene.
Yeah, every scene. Yeah, exactly. Who's going to be the
You're
Bond girl for this
old-fashioned,
scene?
man.
That's right. Who's going to be this scene's Bond girl? So what ends up happening is people internalize these values because, again, story informs the way that we view the world.
Yeah.
And when Flannery O'Connor said, most importantly, you have to tell a good story, you have to make a good novel, part of why that's so important to remember is because we as humans, when we watch a film, we know whether it's true. Like, we know in a narrative sense whether what we're being told is the truth. And so if you have a story that's told effectively and it's truthful about the world, you've got a Catholic story.
It's listening to you, I think a lot of the Hollywood people would say, well, they're making content for adults. But what they're really doing is making adolescent content that appeals to adults. So when someone says, like a man and woman should be faithful to one another. That's actually how adults live.
Yes.
That's the adult way to live. A man and a woman faithful to one another. The rest of it is all adolescent fantasy, but they have somehow convinced us that we're childish for wanting to be adults and for wanting. And so, like, if you go back and, like, one of the great stories in history is the Odyssey. And at the heart of that is this marriage between Odysseus and his wife.
Yes.
And his return to her is the story of what makes a man. And,
yes, thank you.
So this is not childish. This is one of the greatest, most adult, important stories ever told. And the reason the Greeks love it is the man returns to his wife.
That's right. So I've got like 5 different things to say, piggybacking off of everything you said. I have so many responses here. So firstly, when it comes to things being called adult, unfortunately, adult has become a euphemism for pornographic.
I know, that's the dumbest thing.
This is mature content. This is adult content. Like, it's mature and sophisticated to watch pornography.
Right, like put on your smoking jacket.
Yeah,
and we'll have
exactly,
adult entertainment.
Exactly.
It's like a gentleman's
insane.
club.
A gentleman's club. It's like there's not a. I promise you, there's not a single gentleman in the entire club. It's like it is a sad club for sad people. No one there is getting happier. So, when you look at the Odyssey, the way I was taught the Odyssey in the public school I went to in Cook County, so we're just outside Chicago, very blue, the way it was taught was, well, the reason Odysseus is messing around with Calypso and he gets away with doing all these things is because they were just misogynists back then, and they thought men could treat women however they wanted. And I go home and talk to my dad about this. And my dad, he was a public school teacher, and he went to Catholic school back in like the 50s and 60s. And he said, no, that's not the message of the Odyssey. What happens in the Odyssey is, like, he comes back home and his civilization is falling apart and his son is kind of feminine. And the whole moral of the story is, if you don't take care of your kids, you're a piece of trash. That's essentially what my dad said. Those are my father's words.
That's a good reading.
But I'm like, that is, in my mind, the proper reading, whereas what we were told in school was, well, the Greeks just weren't sophisticated enough to know that it was bad for a man to cheat on his wife on an island for 7 years. And the whole point is, it was based in red pilled for Odysseus to do that. And they were so happy to see it, like Odysseus was some red pill influencer, when the whole point of the story is, like you said, he's supposed to get back to his wife. He's supposed to restore his civilization.
Otherwise, it's a terrible story.
Exactly.
Like, the whole point of the story is he has to come back to his wife. That's what makes a civilization, and that's why it is civilization creating art.
Well, do you think that story would last for thousands of years if it was just Odysseus bragging about a crazy weekend where he was, getting together with a lot of different women? Of course not. Like, there's a good moral core at the heart of that story, and so that's what we're doing. What we're making are these cartoons, and the subject matter that it deals with is more adult. Like, it's not for little kids, but it deals with it in a way that, again, firstly, it's not like there's not like nudity or anything like that, just to be really clear. We're not getting crazy. But the reason I say that is because, like, our second episode, which we're working on now, I don't want to get too into detail, but it's in part, the working title is Wisdom Chapter 2, and I won't get into too much detail about it, but it's in part like how people wrestle with their guilty conscience, and specifically about adultery. And again, there's that Bible verse in the title, but the story is not like about anything that's specifically overtly religious. It's just exploring human behavior and why do humans do bad things. And, like, is it truly the case that if we had material abundance, there would be no more crime, and if resources were just distributed properly? So we're dealing with these kinds of philosophical issues with each different episode. Twistedplots.com if you want to see it come to life.
I was going to say, give the address again, but no, you are a pro at this. There's a reason why you were making a living at this by the time you left college.
Well, and this is our first large project like this. So as I mentioned, animation's really expensive, and the inflation-adjusted cost for one South Park episode in 1997 is $500,000. So you can imagine, we want to produce 4 more episodes of this. That's going to be really expensive, but we've actually been able to budget in a way where we're going to get the entire first season done for the inflation-adjusted cost of a single South Park episode.
Wow.
So we've already raised about $315,000 out of the $500,000 we need to raise. We're on track to get funded, but we cannot do it without your help. And we need your help because we need to create good Catholic media. We need to revolutionize the future of entertainment, or what I should say is we need to wage the counter-revolution for the future of entertainment, because this is the most powerful storytelling infrastructure that has ever existed, and we need to claim that back as Catholics.
Man, fire. Let me ask you this. How much did the success of Chosen show people that they could go outside the avenues of media and not just succeed, but break through and dominate?
Massively, massively. So the Chosen far exceeded its fundraising goal, and one of the best compliments that I got when we first launched our campaign is someone said, like, I also donated to the Chosen, and this is the same feeling that I had.
How wonderful.
So yeah, so to me that was a massive compliment. Part of what every dollar that's donated to a show like The Chosen or to Twisted Plots says is, we want our content to be grassroots. We want it to be produced by people who are actually in touch with what we want to see and what good storytelling is, and not some corporate hotshot executive who's going to make determinations about what I am and am not allowed to think or say.
Yeah.
And so we've had 6,000 people at this point send money into us, essentially saying, we do not like the entertainment that we're currently being given. We do want good, entertaining, wholesome stories. We do want it to be grassroots, and we trust you to make it. And so it's very humbling, and it's an honor. And as mentioned, I've got a lot of experience creating animation on budgets that other people have not been able to create animation on. So I know we are going to really stretch your dollar out when you donate at twistedplots.com, and we are going to make an incredibly entertaining and powerful show, which is going to move the dial on the culture war in some very significant ways.
Tell me a little bit about your faith, if you would. So the reason, it seems to me that underlying the reason that you would like to be making these objects that have the power to transform culture is that something operated in you and transformed you.
Yes, absolutely.
Tell me about that.
So I think when I was in my later teens, I fell away from my faith a little bit. And interestingly enough, even when I was 19 and I first started FreedomToons, I was not in a great place spiritually, and it was much more politically oriented. And FreedomToons, to be fair, mostly does comment on politics. And then when I was 19, I had an experience that caused me to revert to my faith. And I won't get into too much detail about the experience, but it essentially is one of those moments in your life where you are confronted with your own mortality to some degree, and you realize, I'm not like God's special favorite person who could never possibly go to hell. I could actually, if I do the wrong things or make the wrong choices and sin without repenting, and it only takes one mortal sin, I could end up in hell for all of eternity. And I was just confronted with something that made me realize that in a way that I hadn't before. And so I dove back into my faith, and I want to say probably around the time I was 23, the city I was living in had weekly Latin Mass. And so I just started attending Latin Mass. I hadn't really gone before as a kid growing up. And then that really helped me deepen my faith. And I started to read and learn about Catholicism in a way that I hadn't before that. And it set me on fire with zeal. And I ended up realizing that some of the political ideas I had been promoting, even though they were by and large more conservative or libertarian, that some of them, weren't compatible with Catholicism. And I needed to push away from this more maybe milquetoast or popular variety of conservatism that doesn't want to critique sexual sin, that wants to say let every adult do whatever they want, that maybe doesn't talk enough about some of the importance of certain locally provided social safety nets. And I needed to form my values around a political thought that was more robustly Catholic.
Wow. And so still a Latin Mass guy, or
when I can, yeah. So I've moved a bit. I was in a city that had it every single Sunday. I'm not in that same position anymore, but it was amazing to go while I was able to. It's beautiful. It's a very beautiful liturgy.
So what would you ultimately like to see? I mean, you have this fire in you and this intelligence that suggests to me that this could grow and God willing, it will grow. But would you like to see your work as part of a community of artists who are using their skills not just for the base of let's get something out there that gets a lot of clicks, but let's make things that help people be human beings?
Amen to that. That's very, very important. So again, we have over 290 million views on the FreedomToons channel alone without any money spent on marketing. So I understand how to get clicks, and I understand the importance of that, but it can't be all about that. And that's a huge part of why I wanted to crowdfund twisted plots. It's because I don't want to be held accountable to any particular set of executives, but I also don't want to be in a position where we need to maximize clicks in a certain way, which would create an incentive for us to not tell the best possible story, but to instead be trendy. So that's a huge part. So again, every dollar you give at twistedplots.com, that helps us with that goal of being able to make this natural and organic and grassroots. And then on top of that, you asked about some of my future ambitions here, and I appreciate the compliments. What we're hoping to do is use Twisted Plots as a massive value-shaping storytelling opportunity to persuade people and help them adopt values that are more true, good, and beautiful, and also have that as a springboard to launch into more large projects. This is going to be our first foray into longer form content. So I've got screenplays written for films. I've got treatments together for other animated shows that we would like to create, some live action shows. So this is going to be the first show of many. This is going to be the first show of many if we're able to launch and if it's successful.
Praise
and I
God.
firmly believe that it will be.
If I want to be a filmmaker and go to Hollywood and be a filmmaker, I can go to USC Film School, or I can, there's a kind of pipeline of preparing people for to keep churning out what's been churned out, since the 1920s in Hollywood. But what's the pipeline for somebody who wants to do what you want to do? Is there any pipeline?
There is no pipeline. You just got to build it yourself.
Really?
Yeah, and there's an advantage to that because if I was trying to use a traditional pipeline, we wouldn't be able to do this. If I went to any studio executive and I said, we're going to make a 5-episode anthology series for $500,000, and we're also going to start with the pilot already completed for people who contribute to it to see, they would say, get out of my office. You can't do that. They would say you need millions of dollars to do this type of thing. Because with the bloated Hollywood infrastructure, you actually do. And this is also just the problem of animation being very expensive. It's an incredibly powerful medium for storytelling, but because it's so expensive, it has been totally dominated by these massive corporations. You have independent animators who can make shorter projects and shorter cartoons, but when it comes to half-hour long content, television-length content, or film-length content, you need millions of dollars usually.
But
so the fact that we went out there, I spent the last 11 years very painstakingly building up this huge distribution infrastructure and fan base, and there have been a lot of very late nights from myself and everyone on the team basically to build the channel up to where it is, and that's what has allowed us to tap into such a massive audience. No one in Hollywood was ever going to give a conservative traditional Catholic this kind of a platform while they were being as openly, conservative and Catholic as I am. It's not to say that there aren't any Catholics in Hollywood. It's just to say usually they have to be pretty quiet about it until they get to a certain point.
But okay, so but that's I don't mean just the pipeline for projects though, but for people. So because I imagine there are 17-year-olds who can produce content. Like it's amazing what people at 12, 13, 15, 17 can produce now.
Yes.
So they want a pipeline for how do they get to where their stuff is being seen and maybe even monetized, and maybe even it becomes their career?
That's a really good question. So there's a couple things you need to realize. First, you have to ask yourself, if you're this young kid at home, if you're 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, firstly, good on you for already starting this, because I began teaching myself when I was about 12, 13 years old. And so good to start young. It's good to be ambitious, and it's good to know what you want to do with your life. There's a couple questions you got to ask yourself. Firstly, do I want to run my own business? And that's not a given, because running a business is tough. It's a lot of paperwork. Accountability ends up all landing on you. It's very stressful. You got to ask, do I want to run my own business, or do I want to work for an outfit that I trust to put me on good projects? And then you got to make determinations based on that. Now, if you're going to run your own business, regardless of what you're going to do, actually, what I would recommend is make as much content as you can, as high quality as you can, and post it as often as you can. Now, if you're like 13, 14, probably don't. I don't ever want to give the advice to a minor to post anything on the internet, basically. And we started posting stuff on FreedomToons, or I started posting the FreedomToons videos when I was 19. So I would recommend not posting a bunch of stuff while you're a minor. The internet's like a dangerous and creepy place. But whatever you're going to post anywhere, obviously, make sure your parents are thoroughly aware of all of that. But I would say, enter film festivals, really hone your craft, show it to friends and family, and always understand that the audience is going to be right about things, not about everything. They might have difficulty seeing your vision, but what an audience is going to let you know is, did that make sense? This is a huge thing that's hard for storytellers to figure out when they first start, especially if you're doing animation or you're doing film, is something will make perfect sense to you, and then you'll film it and you'll edit it and you'll show it to someone else and they'll be like, I have no idea what's going on here. Yeah, I have no idea what's going on here. And the only way you get better at that is with audience feedback.
So just make the stuff and share it with people. Not necessarily share it online if you're 13 years old. And I'm glad you said that. I hadn't thought about that. But 13, the
young.
internet's an evil place.
Very evil place.
Like you probably have to face a lot. Like everything you post probably gets tremendous pushback. And I'm guessing it's not all well mannered.
No, there's some crazy people out there.
Really?
Man. And so part of what's really cool actually is, because I churn out so much content so often, and we are doing a video once a week or sometimes twice a week, and we have over 700 videos, probably even more than that at this point. It's unlikely for us at this point for like a specific video to catch that much flack. I think at first people on the left, what is this? This is horrible, but they're just kind of used to us. They see our videos and they don't pay that much attention to them. So we get a tremendous amount of positive feedback. And our videos are all of our videos are like 99% upvoted, pretty much. But listen, yeah, I do get crazy messages from left-wing people as well. So there is just going to be pushback. There are evil, hateful people out there.
And if you're 13, man, don't subject yourself to that.
Yeah,
God help you.
certainly not.
Those are, you have to treat that as an unreal world. It's got nothing to do with you or your talent or whatnot.
And you also don't know, especially at that age, it's difficult for you to know how to like cover your tracks in certain ways. You'd be surprised what information people are able to use on the internet to track you down. The Shia LaBeouf was located by 4chan over a matter of hours because they saw the way a plane was flying behind him in the background of a video he filmed and posted. So you got to be yes, they figured out the flight route. They were able to figure out from the light what time of day it was, and based on the plane's angle, what flight route it was on, and from there it was done.
That's why I stopped posting videos on my private jet.
No, yeah, exactly. It's really important.
And listen, kids, if you're posting videos of yourself on your private jet, don't do it.
Everyone at Catholic Answers is a private jet.
We're right. We got an airport right over there.
We're on a private jet right now. I said I'm not going to do this interview unless we are flying.
Catholic Answers super jet we're flying on right now. What are the? Maybe this is changing, and maybe this is a constantly. Maybe it doesn't even matter because it's constantly changing. But the intermediaries that you have to go through to get to the public, is it YouTube? Is it TikTok? Is it Facebook? Is it MySpace? Is it Alta Vista? Who are you going through?
So we're primarily on YouTube. I mentioned we have 1 million subscribers. That's just YouTube. We've got other platforms that have pretty large numbers of people subscribe there as well, and we get good views there, but I don't even really count those. YouTube is our main bread and butter. We post on Twitter now as well. But when I first started doing this, YouTube was basically the only game in town for video sharing. And so that's where we started doing it. That's where we built our audience up. My understanding is that more and more young people are on TikTok. Our videos get millions of views on TikTok as well, just not for us. Like people steal them and freeboot them to their TikTok and get a bunch of views and get a bunch of money. We're actually we're actually a charity that sustains TikTokers who can't come up with their own videos apparently, and they'll just take our stuff.
There's no law against that or rule against that.
There is. It just doesn't.
Couldn't you call TikTok up and go, look, I need to speak with Mr. Tick?
Yeah, Mr. Talk. No, his last name is Talk. He's Mr. Talk. Yeah.
Okay, but like that seems so wrong. I guess that's just the world we live. It's the Wild West out there, isn't it?
Dude, no, it's true, and it happens all the time. But TikTok, I don't think they're really going to do anything about it. But
people are just stealing.
All the time, dude. I've had people steal stuff, cut our ending bumper out where we're promoting our page, and like cover our watermark with their logo. It happens all the time. It's all the time.
Well, you seem very nonchalant
I know,
about
listen, it stinks,
people stealing from you.
No, I mean, I do what I can to mitigate it, but at some point, there's only so much you can do, and one of the number one rules is like you can't get mad on the internet. You just can't get mad.
That's why I can't be on the internet.
Yeah.
That's like saying I can't get mad on the freeway. Then I just better stay off the freeway because I can't do it.
Listen, God's taking care of us. We're blessed and we're doing fine. And if you guys go over to twistedplots.com and help us make this show, listen, like I said, we're about 9 days out now. And a crowdfunding campaign you usually run for about anywhere between a month to 40 days. And so we're 9 days out from the finish, and we already have 315,000. So we're on track to finish up, but we need help from you guys in order to get to that finish line. So go to twistedplots.com. Once we make that, again, this is crowdfunding, so people freebooting that and stealing it, it's not something I'm allowing them to do, but it's not going to hurt us in the same way as it does with FreedomToons, because we're doing like a whole, full-length show, and you guys are the ones helping us to fund it, which I massively appreciate it, and which is going to allow us to make the best product without having to get bogged down by too many of the externals.
There's some people that'll be like, I feel like we're in a bind with the technology because people don't want to get involved with certain. As a matter of fact, people will say to us sometimes, well, "Why are you on TikTok? It's so evil." And we're like, "No, you were supposed to take the gospel and go everywhere with it. Just go out into the world with it." But you do kind of sometimes feel like you need a shower in some of the places that your content goes.
And it takes a lot for an animator to feel like they need a shower. Like, I went to animation school, and it really takes a lot to get an animator to shower. But even I'll be like, man, I need a shower after that. These platforms are crazy.
So tell me how the moral reasoning, the way that you do it. How do you do the moral calculus?
Yeah, there's a couple things. Firstly, you got to remember that direct cooperation with evil and remote cooperation with evil are different things. And if we never had any remote cooperation with evil, like literally none of us would have jobs. Most of us work for companies where the CEO has values, even if it's a small business, that don't align with our own, and maybe even donate to causes that we don't agree with. If you want to be effective and you want to spread a positive message, you have to go where people are. So Jonah didn't want to go to Nineveh. And look, man, if you want to spend all your time in the belly of the whale, go ahead. But there are people in Nineveh, and they need to hear the truth as well. And so that's fundamentally how I view these social media platforms.
You just, right. Get out of the belly of the whale. That's a very good one. I saw that I know that story from VeggieTales.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, that Phil Vischer made that one. No,
is that?
I shouldn't joke, but that's such a fun story too, because this is one thing I obviously stories what informs our values. Jesus uses parables. We learn about the world through Bible stories, and obviously there's sermons as well. Those are also important, but it's important to remember that the Bible is a very holy book and needs to be taken very seriously, but there's parts of it that are funny, not in the sense that, I know when people say that, red flags go up because we live in a modern culture that likes to mock the Bible, but not in a mocking sense, not laughing at, but laughing with, where there's certain things the Bible will point out that just are really funny. The fact that Jonah is angry that the Ninevites convert and God doesn't smite them is so funny to me, because that's also very relatable. We're like, come on, they converted? So we're not getting any smiting. I came all the way out here, we're not getting any smiting? All right. I think that's hilarious. There's also great stuff. I was talking about this the other day at a talk I was giving. There's really great stuff in Tobit. Really great stuff. The visual of the visual of the bride's father digging a grave while the daughter's getting married is so hysterical.
I don't remember that, but I got to go look up. I told you that, but. Yeah, that's the angel that's sneaky, the sneaky angel.
Well, the thing that's really great about it is when his son is gone for a couple days, or he's gone a little longer because he's got held up on his journey. Tobit's wife is like, "My son is dead, my son is dead, my son is dead," which is such a funny mom thing. Thousands of years ago, they were the same way.
Right.
And then similarly, dads were the same way. He goes, "No, he's fine. He's fine. Like he was probably just hung up." And she says, "Stop deceiving me. My son is dead." It's so great. But there are just these threads of the human condition.
Sure. Yes.
And I think in order to tell an effective story, you have to touch on those. That's why there's certain films that just are timeless. If all you're doing are these pop culture references, then your content ends up being very disposable. And there's a time and place for that. With FreedomToons, some of the videos we make are what I call evergreen videos. These are videos I think people will be able to enjoy quite a while down the line. Some of them are current events-based videos. We're like making a joke about something Trump just said or something the left just did. And those videos, they bring new eyes in, but they're not the ones people would really watch months or years from now. What we're building with Twisted Plots is something that I firmly believe is going to stand the test of time, because we are tapping into that fundamental human experience. And we are telling stories based on the way that humans always have been. And even though I am Catholic, part of what's so good about Catholicism is that we believe in truth. The truth is a person. That person is Jesus Christ. The truth is not just abstraction. It's not just a set of principles. It is an actual person. And the more you come to terms with that and recognize that recognition of truth is recognition of Christ, you will find that by not having an agenda and by just telling a story honestly and tapping into that human condition and what is relatable to people, you are spreading a positive, truthful, even Catholic message.
Do you foresee something like now? I know this is not what you're going to do, but I have the feeling.
TwistedPlots.com, by the way.
We're going to just have to make a cut of all the times you said TwistedPlots.com on here, but to keep doing it, I don't mind. That's you should do that.
Yeah,
but,
sorry for interrupting.
But like Netflix, I don't really watch Netflix, but you get these. Korean shows where people's heads blow up and all that, and they'll go around the world getting this content, which is of a certain ethos, and you may say that, well, there's a great variety, but it all fits within a certain limit. Here's the limit here, here's the limit on this end. Can you foresee a world where content like the content that you're making is no longer just outside? That where you can be in with all the Korean demon shows and do you see what I'm saying? Or will you always be alternate media?
That's a phenomenal question. I think ideally we're going to get to a point where alternative media is the dominant media. In fact, I call the old stuff legacy media because I'm not sure how interested people are in it. How interested people are in it at this point. Sorry, I got tongue-tied for a moment.
Yeah.
So when you look at Netflix, here's a very disturbing bit of information about Netflix. They tell the people who are this is, I hope you're sitting when you hear this because this is nuts. But they tell, if you care at all about art or cinema, this is crazy. They tell the people writing their movies and shows, write it in a way so that someone who's scrolling on their phone or in another room just listening to their television can still understand what's going on. In other words, make this a radio play. And not just a radio play for someone whose IQ has been nerfed by about 20 points because they're on their phone.
Wow.
And yes, and so much, I'm not saying this is true of everything on Netflix, but so much of it is just garbage because it's not produced for a true cinematic experience. They don't care about the visuals, right? Everyone on my team, we've been doing this for so long, and we've got people from all sorts of different walks of life, people who never had an animation job before they worked for us. We've got people who used to work on Disney projects. And they're all extremely excited for Twisted Plots and to work on a longer project. And we're very invested in making sure it looks really good and it is an entire experience for you as a viewer and not just background noise that you'll be listening to while you scroll on your phone, which is unfortunately what these streaming services are opting to produce. So aside from the stuff that they're making not being virtuous and promoting negative values, it's also just declining in quality in ways that independent media created by people who actually care won't.
Yeah.
And so I think we are going to become the mainstream. And if we don't, I think the situation's bad, not because I think Netflix and these companies will necessarily stay in charge. I think they'll always have a massive market share. But I also think that AI is going to do frightening things. There's part of me that thinks that AI is just a punishment from God because Catholics didn't do enough to create good media.
So now the computers are going to do it.
Exactly. And now it's just all going to be decentralized and it's all going to be very wonky and I'm nervous about the potential for it, but again, I'm also very optimistic about the future. As I've seen the outpouring of support that we've gotten for the show that we're trying to make, I'm very optimistic about the fact that people do just want good content. They want good entertainment made by people who don't hate them that, again, promotes a positive value. And there's other films I can talk about. I know earlier I mentioned everyone's favorite movie, Titanic, and the fact that on paper it's really bad. There are other films that are universally beloved, and when you scratch beneath the surface, you find that even though this is a secular film made by people who are not Christian, or at the very least didn't have interest in promoting Christianity, that there are solid Christian ideas in this story. And this touches on what I was saying earlier, which is that if you're just telling the truth, if you're just telling a story that speaks to the human heart and spirit in a certain way, you end up with a Christian story. One really great example of this is Shawshank Redemption. I'm not sure if you've ever seen this film.
I have, yeah.
And for anyone at home, spoiler alert, right? It's a 30-something-year-old film, but I recommend it. I think it's a beautiful film. And again, spoilers. But you look at the subject matter of this film, and Stephen King, who created the original novella, not like a conservative Christian guy, all right?
Really?
Yeah, believe it or not. I'm not
Oh,
sure if you've seen
okay.
him on Twitter. And then Frank Darabont also was not creating this film to spread any kind of Christian message. He's just an unbelievably talented director and made one of the best movies of all time. But you look at this film and it's uncanny. You have the story of an innocent man who's condemned for crimes committed by others, and he enters into the realm of the guilty, and he's very mysterious to everyone there, and they're all trying to size him up and figure out who this guy is, including the people who are in charge. They're also very fascinated by him. Who is this guy? And so as you're watching the film, initially, it seems as if maybe this is just kind of a story about social justice because he builds a library for the prisoners and he tries to make life a bit better for them. And then what you end up finding through the course of the film is that the true work that he's doing is the unseen stuff, some of the unseen stuff, when you find out that he slowly tunneled his way out of prison throughout the course of the film, and he like really does squeeze through the narrow gate in the most literal sense to get out of this prison. And then, once he's out of jail, he has the wealth that he's built up from his time suffering in prison under a different name. So like he uses a different identity that he created for the warden with this money laundering scheme. He enters through this narrow gate, and then he like literally becomes a new man and has all of the treasure that he built up through his suffering. And who does he end up saving? There's only one person who gets out of jail with him at the end, and that's Red. And Red is the quote-unquote only guilty man in Shawshank. At the beginning of the film, there's this joke where everyone in the prison is innocent. I didn't do anything. My lawyer messed the case up. I'm an innocent person. And Red says, nope, I'm the only guilty man in Shawshank. And he's the only one who makes it out. That is a profoundly Christian story told by people who weren't even intending to tell a Christian story.
Right.
And yet, it's one of the most universally beloved films of all time. Why? Because all of those plot points, all of those motifs and themes, they speak to something so deep within us that we know is true, Because if we know truth, we know Christ.
So the other day I said to somebody here, they were talking about the Daily Wire, and I said something about the Daily Wire and mainstream media. And this is a young person, and they said, Daily Wire is mainstream media. And I was like, no, it's not quite mainstream media. And so that I wonder if, it just seems to me that for so long, media has been dominated by something that it was what was coming out of, say, CBS in the 1970s was lower than the culture that was enjoying it. So it was taking the culture down with it. It wasn't higher than the culture.
Yes.
It was lower. So it always seems to me that what came on television was, and then you watch these like, on CNN, they'll do CNN the 70s, and they'll do the television, how groundbreaking the television of the 70s was and all this. And they're celebrating this stuff that actually was just dragging people lower and lower and lower in their standards. It was getting dumber and dumber as it went, and less morally considered as it went. Is it just the case that popular culture has to be a moral drag, or can popular culture ever be a moral kind of sail that gets you going, you know?
It can be a moral sell. I
You
just
think
want to,
so?
yeah, absolutely. So here's what I want to comment on. Firstly, you mentioned this show made about the 70s. I remember when I was in college, my buddies and I were sitting around the TV, and one of those was on. It was about the 70s or 80s, but it was, I think it's those PBS documentaries where they talk about how groundbreaking the media was in this decade.
Yeah.
And neither of my friends were that interested in politics or media analysis, but we were just cracking up because like every other scene was some pundit going, this moment was so important.
I
This
know.
was so important.
I know.
It was so important. This thing we did on television was so important.
Yeah,
It
right.
was such an important moment. And it's funny to like laugh at people for just patting themselves in the back because that's all it is the media talking about how awesome the media is.
Yeah.
But where they're actually correct is it was important. It was bad, but it was important. It did drag our culture down. It's important that that happened. That wasn't some small thing. And so on the one hand, when they were pushing for the moral degradation that they've pushed for, when the Christian right called that out, said that that was unacceptable, and accurately predicted what would flow from it, what did they say? It's just television. It's just a little moment on a show. It's not a big deal.
Why are you
and now what do they say? It was so important. It was so important that happened.
Excellent point, Seamus. I never thought. Yeah, it's a matter of constantly having it both ways. And the truth is, when they say art is important, they are right.
Yes.
Art is important. It makes culture. It's one of the things that determines the energies that the culture will follow, or
That's right.
which way. This is like the river that culture floats on, is art in many ways, and that's music. Okay, so you could talk about the groundbreaking music of the 1970s. Yeah, there's a reason why things got worse after all that groundbreaking music, because it was morally destructive. But now that's not to say that some of it is not. Like, you can find things in there that are, like you said, like the Shawshank Redemption.
Yes.
There's rock and roll music that's like that. There's rap music that's like, there's country music that's like, but the general thing is a drag that keeps pulling culture downward. And I'm not as sanguine as you are that pop culture can be a sail.
Well, not pop culture as it currently exists.
Okay.
But I think pop culture, as created by people who are trying to tell a genuinely true human story, can be good and can lift the culture up. So right now, unfortunately, our media is just not made by people, at least mass media, legacy media, is not made by people who have positive values. I mentioned Titanic earlier, and I just keep talking about it, because I love that movie so much. But no, the reason I keep bringing it up is because it's a good example of somebody's values just kind of helplessly coming out through the story that they tell. I don't think these movies or TV shows were made by people who are sitting there and going, how can I destroy the culture?
No, of course not.
I think that they were just telling the story from their heart, and unfortunately, like, their heart is one that believes that those things are good.
Right.
And so we just have to have people in control of the media infrastructure. We need to, in the same way that everyone in control of the media right now has really bad values, we just need people to create really, really good art with good values. And people are going to gravitate towards what is better, what is more entertaining. People are not going to gravitate always towards what's morally better, but if you make a more entertaining and compelling product, people will watch it. And that's why we need to make really entertaining and compelling stuff that has a good value in it. It's not enough to just make stuff that has good values. You have to make stuff that has good values and is really entertaining.
So are you advocating being moralistic in art?
Well, it depends on what you mean by moralistic, because everything has a moral quality to it, whether you intend for it to or not. I don't think that your animated film or show should be a lecture. That's really important to me. That's really important with what we're doing with Twisted Plots. Even when we were working on the pilot, I sent the script around to my team, my animation team, because this is another cool thing about Twisted Plots is there isn't much space between writing and animation. For a lot of shows, you have the writers over here and you have the animation studio here, and it's outsourced. Well, with what we do, because I am an animator and because I run the animation studio, I give things to my team. They can come up with visual gags. We can really enhance the quality of the show with the close relationship between writing and animation, which other shows don't have. But so I send the pilot to Caleb before we made it, before he began working on it. And what he said was, he's like, I really liked it. And he suggested some jokes. But he said, this one scene here, this one monologue at the end, it made me feel like if I were listening to that as an outsider, I would feel like I was being preached at, and it would trigger the thing in the audience's brain that goes, I don't like this. This was an after-school special. I enjoyed it 99% of the way there, and then at the end it became an after-school special. And I went, fair enough. And so I trimmed and refined and changed it and pulled all those things out so that it could still tell a good story that still, by the way, has a very clear moral message, but which isn't preaching at the audience in a way that makes them feel condescended to, or which is just frankly like boring and obnoxious.
Yeah. This I have to say, my wife, if sometimes I'll ask her, she'll watch a movie or a show or something. I'll go, how was it? And she'll go, well, they made sure I learned my lesson. And this is her way of like saying, it was good. It maybe had good things that I liked, but that the people who made it just didn't have confidence in their art. What they thought was, I've got to put it into words that at some point say what the point of all of this is, or I failed. And the truth is, it's when you do that you fail. Like you shouldn't come out of a great play going, man, that speech really summed it all up for me.
That's right.
Like, you should come out of a play going, wow, there's a lot of challenging things in that. And that's why the discussion after the play is important.
Yeah,
You know, like,
exactly. Like, what did I take away from this? So Aaron Sorkin is Aaron Sorkin for a reason.
oh my gosh.
and
Talk about
everything-
teaching lessons.
Yeah, exactly.
It never stops preaching at you.
It's all his stuff that, you know, they walk and they talk, and one character owns the conservative character, the liberal always wins. But I'll just be honest, he's talented. He's a talented guy. He's good at writing satisfying dialogue. But that's also why I say only Aaron Sorkin's Aaron Sorkin. He can write things that feel very cathartic to hear if you're of a certain political persuasion, or even if you're apolitical and you don't have any particular perspective. If you're a conservative, you're sitting there like, that's nonsense, but it sounded cool. And so certain writers can make something that is really preachy sound good.
Oh, that's a good point.
Again, like, it gets old fast. I think, respectfully, to Aaron Sorkin's talent, it still gets old. But yeah, most people can't pull it off at all. Most people try to write some, you know, preachy monologue or preachy dialogue, and it doesn't even get off the ground. I think it's okay to have characters express their values in one way or another. But it's also, to me, it's really important that the audience doesn't feel preached at, or that, this is another thing, they can't feel like you have a self-insert. So what a lot of writers will do is they have the character who is like, they've clearly fantasized about having this debate in the shower at some point, you know, and it's like, oh, I wish I would say that to the conservative. And then the character is clearly like them
Getting it
owning
off their
the con.
chest.
Yes,
That's
and
right.
you can't do that. You really can't.
Well, you can if you're Aaron Sorkin. You can make millions
can
and
if you're
millions
Aaron
doing
Sorkin,
it.
'cause listen, he's very talented.
The problem with his art, though, is that everyone who doesn't agree with him politically is constantly rolling their eyes. So it's not real art.
exactly, I
Because
agree.
it can't reach the person who disagrees with you. It doesn't have the power
right.
to do. Although I will say, at his best, I'm sure he does. He overcomes that, which is that's a habitual flaw that he has. But I don't want to suggest that he always is ruled by his habitual flaws. He has created some beautiful dialogue, some beautiful things. I don't want. So when you that moment where you go, oh, I'm getting my lesson now. You know, like, here's like, eat your peas. That's
Yes,
what you're,
exactly. Well, that's what separates art from an after-school special.
Yeah,
It ends up feeling like an after-school special, and it's really important to us that what we're making spreads a positive moral value without feeling like an after-school special. And the way you do that is just by telling the story, right? You have again, our second episode, I don't want to get too much into detail, but there's a pretty strong theme in there that's reminiscent maybe of what we have with Cain and Abel. You know, it's not like the story of Cain and Abel was communicated by two people in a debate over whether you should give enough to God, and then the story ends with like one person owning the other. Like, no, it's very intense. There's murder. And so you see like the visceral human emotion in that story, which people can still relate to today. But B, it does teach a moral lesson simply by explaining what happens. And that's a really profound lesson. Jordan Peterson would go, that's like one of the oldest stories we have, man, you know, and it's really quite profound, the Quarreling Brothers. But part of why it's so important is because that story, and when I was writing our second episode, I wasn't thinking about Cain and Abel at all, actually, but reflecting on it, I went, oh, this kind of has somewhat of a similar message, because the story I was writing is just exploring one of the reasons why people do bad things, and one of the kind of spiritual motivators that has nothing to do with material want, which is what we're constantly told is the root of crime by ideologues. And I realized after telling the story that there was this kernel of the Cain and Abel story, because people do find themselves very, very, very angry with those who behave the way they know they should be behaving. And the way we see that now, like the modern version of Cain and Abel is, you know, Cain says to Abel, you have forced me to internalize self-hatred with this sacrifice by upholding these patriarchal norms that tell me I am obligated to make a better sacrifice when I am of lower means and couldn't afford to. So this is systemic violence against me. Like, that's sort of the modern manifestation of that.
Right,
but it's
right.
the exact same phenomena. It's like, you did something better than me and I hate you.
Yeah, resentment.
Yes.
Right, but depicting resentment is better than describing resentment, and describing resentment is better than making a speech about resentment. So the real artist can somehow make you live it, so that you identify it and you know it by living it, not by being all the arrows pointing. This is what you're supposed to be getting out of this. This is what you're. I mean, I wish you great success, but I hope that what really will happen is that young people will be inspired. Because look, you could get an iPhone and some lighting probably, and maybe a computer to write a script on, and you can make a movie now.
Yes, yes.
And there's probably geniuses out there who are going to make their iPhone films, and maybe they already are. I don't know, but they're going to be teenagers or people in their 20s, or maybe people who come to it really late in life will be surprised by some 70-year-old who was an accountant her whole life, and all of a sudden she's a brilliant director who made. But I just think there's a democratizing because of the cheapness of the technology now. Like my iPhone is probably better than the best movie cameras of the 1940s and 50s. So
a lot cheaper too.
Yeah. So what people need is to do it. And like you said,
that's right. Well,
go ahead.
No. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. I want you to run with it wherever you want.
Yeah. Well, this is really important because you're right. There is a democratizing that has occurred, and YouTube allowed the infrastructure for a lot of this. The internet allowed the infrastructure for a lot of this. The fact that I'm here today is because I had access to these tools. But I want to issue a word of caution, which is, while I think there is room for optimism, we can't assume someone else is going to do it. Like, I got into this because I knew I had to do this. Like, I knew I was interested in making media. I knew I had to change the culture. I knew all of the media that I was surrounded by was promoting a bad moral message, and even the stuff that did promote a good moral message was full of blasphemy or even put nudity in it. And so I knew the culture had to change. I knew something had to be done about it, and we've had tools to increase democratization. And at the same time that we've had the tools to decrease democratization, the studios have gotten lazy, and the studios have started producing content which is not very good. So right now, this is a pivotal moment, and we really have to claim it. Like, we really have to claim this. And I say this because even though democratization is happening, we've already seen this. This is what happened with books. And this is a great book. Trent Horn's an awesome guy. But everyone today has the ability to write a novel. Nobody does it. And when people do make novels, publishing companies are still in control of the distribution. So even if we get to the point where AI makes it so that anyone with a computer can make a full-length film, if we don't have the distribution mechanisms, and if we don't have the discipline, and if we don't have the audience built up, it will not do anything for us.
And is that what you're doing? You're building
That's what I'm building. That's what I'm building. And so go to twistedplots.com. Help us to make this show. Once we create this show, it's going to send a very clear signal. It's already sending a very clear signal. Every dollar we've raised at this point has said, we want entertainment that has good moral values in it. We want it to be produced by people who don't hate us and hate our way of life. And from there, when we release it, this sends a message that these independent content creators like us are able to create longer form projects, which helps us to start to be able to produce films and other shows, which is the next logical step after we create Twisted Plots. Twisted Plots is our first foray out into longer form content. It's our first stepping out into the larger media landscape. So we've got a lot of experience creating media. We've got a lot of experience creating animation on a very low budget relative to what other animation is produced for. And we've already got a lot of experience getting eyes on our content. So this is the next logical step. And you can help us take it by supporting at twistedplots.com. And once this show is produced, it's going to open the doors that will allow us to build up that infrastructure that will put good messages back in entertainment in a much broader way. As opposed to just one or two good shows here, we will be able to produce films, television shows. That's the goal. That's the long-term goal of all of this.
Your energy is amazing, and it gives me the sense that that you really are headed for success, including along with that, the quality of what you have already produced.
Oh, thank you.
I would point out that you have 2 books in front of you to recommend. He had 2 books in front of him. 2 books. He chose Trent Horn over the Lord God.
But
That's what he
let me
chose.
explain why. Let me actually explain why. There's a really, really good reason for that. Because this, despite what you may have been told, this book here, before the printing press ever existed, was being circulated, right? Like the printing press made books like this possible. And, you know, listen, Trent's a really smart guy. I believe that Trent would be there with a quill pen if the printing press didn't exist, and he'd be making all his own copies and the books would be everywhere. But my point is that while the printing press and nowadays having a computer and just being able to type things out has opened the door for more people to write more books, and we have gotten more great books because of that, it has not led to the kind of democratization that has resulted in the best-selling nonfiction novels all being made by good Catholics or having good moral values. And so similarly, we cannot count on the democratized infrastructure that is starting to emerge today to do that for Catholic media. We need to be proactive and we need to make it ourselves. And what I'm working on doing is creating media that spreads a positive message. I'm doing this as a Catholic, and this is not media that is only going to be able to be enjoyed by Catholics. I have many, many, many in my audience who are not Catholic. Very many in my audience are not Catholic. And so we've already cultivated this kind of audience because you got to be able to speak to people who don't already agree with you on everything.
I feel bad. I don't know if we gave you an opportunity to give out the website. Could you do that before we go?
I don't know if you guys mentioned. Yeah. So
I'm not sure we got that out. But
if you believe in if you believe in what I'm saying, if you believe in this vision, if you think there needs to be more good content, and you understand that it has to be made by people who have experience in this field, that this can't just be some startup run by people who haven't been a part of this sphere, who don't know this landscape. You want grassroots content made by people who know what they're doing and know how to make an entertaining product and are going to deliver for you. Go to twistedplots.com. Help us fund the first season of our show. It's gonna be a hilarious animated anthology show. Each episode covers a completely new topic. Think like Twilight Zone or Black Mirror, but instead of having this kind of edgy Black Mirror-esque nihilism that you see a lot today, underneath it all, the moral of every story is life matters, you matter, morality matters. The things that you've been told are true by your society are not true. You do matter. We do need to strive for truth, beauty, and goodness. That's at the core of this show. That's the core thesis of this show. If you want to help us create this, go to twistedplots.com. We've got just under 2 weeks left to get fully funded. We're getting close. As I mentioned, we've raised, I think, about $315,000 at this point with 6,000 generous donors. So if you guys go over to twistedplots.com, it's not too late for you to become a part of this movement and support it. Pledge $25. You'll get access to our pilot. You'll be able to see for ourselves. We also have different reward tiers that will allow you to give feedback on things. And I really want audience feedback, by the way. I really want to know what you guys think of what we're producing. So go to twistedplots.com, support our show, help us to make this. We cannot afford to not be making good media. You can be a part of this. I've got the team, I've got the experience, and I've got the track record. You give me your support, and I will be unstoppable.
all I said was give the website.
Twistedplots.com.
Seamus Coughlin. God bless you, brother. Thank you so much.
Someone goes, is there an apologist here? My husband's having a heart attack and he hasn't converted. And then you go,
I'm an apologist. Where's your husband? We're going to just have to make a cut of all the times you said twistedplots.com on here.
If I have your support, if you go to twistedplots.com, twistedplots.com if you want to see it come to life. When you donate at twistedplots.com, so every dollar you give at twistedplots.com, and if you guys go over to twistedplots.com and help us make this show, so go to twistedplots.com.
I have the feeling...
twistedplots.com, by the way. Go to twistedplots.com, and you can help us take it by supporting at twistedplots.com. Go to twistedplots.com. So if you guys go over to twistedplots.com, it's not too late for you to become a part of this movement and support it. So go to twistedplots.com, support our show, help us to make this. We cannot afford to not be making good media. You can be a part of this. I've got the team, I've got the experience, and I've got the track record. You give me your support, and I will be unstoppable.
All I said was give the website.
Twistedplots.com.
Seamus Coughlin. God bless you, brother. Thank you so much.